What is up, guys? It is the Blue Bloods back with our final Week 11 college football preview, and we are taking it to the Boombox Classic this weekend, going down in Baton Rouge on Saturday night. That not only has SWAC Championship implications, but bragging rights between two fan bases that would give anything to win this game. This one is going to be huge. The bands are going to be electric. The fans are going to be electric. I mean, I've seen like the Facebook group say if you aren't in Baton Rouge by like 3 p.m., good luck even like getting near the stadium. So this one's huge. We have Jackson State traveling to Baton Rouge to take on Southern, 6 p.m. Central kickoff live on ESPN3. And let's set the stage, man. And also, like I told y'all on the PV Alcorn preview this morning, we got two games of the week for the SWAC. It'll be PV and Alcorn and Jackson State Southern. So make sure to comment your score predictions below to enter our $50 Venmo giveaway and subscribe. You already know. But let's set the table, man. The Jackson State comes in 8-1, 6-0 in the SWAC, looking to clinch their spot in the SWAC Championship this weekend with a win, along with keeping their undefeated SWAC season alive in just a huge rivalry win. And the Tigers could be rejuvenated. The coach Prime should be back on, potentially be back on the sidelines, which is going to add even more storylines and excitement to an already hyped game. But they're going to lean on the strong defense and just one of the best freshman seasons we've seen in a long time in Shador Sanders at quarterback. But on the other side, we have Southern entering at 4-5, 3-3 in the SWAC, and the Jags are looking to bounce back from their tough loss to FAMU last weekend. But Jason Rollins and this team are going to roll into this one with nothing to lose. I expect Southern to throw everything but the kitchen sink at Jackson State this weekend, and they're going to try to pull off one of the upsets of the year in the SWAC on Saturday night. So, looking at this series, though, the Jags have dominated recent history. An 8-game win streak is currently in process for Southern. And the last win for Jackson State came in 2013 in Baton Rouge. So they're looking to get their first win since 2013 this weekend in Baton Rouge. So everything on the line, man. This one's going to be one of the best games of the weekend. But let's go ahead and start talking about the game. Let's get to the keys of the game. We'll start with Jackson State. And if y'all been rocking with me all year, the key for Jackson State hasn't changed, and it won't until someone proves me wrong that it shouldn't be the key. And the key is to put the ball in Shador Sanders' hands. He is going to have to be the playmaker and distributor for this offense, especially with the run game still slowly but surely coming along. But the Southern defense allowing over 225 yards per game through the air, almost 400 total yards per game, and over 32 points per game. Shador Sanders should be set up to have a giant game this weekend. And you've got to put the ball in his hands, and you have to trust him in this moment to go out and get you a big win on the road. Now, when you look at what Shador's done this season, man, it's impressive. However you want to spin it, 67% completion percentage, over 2,400 yards, 23 touchdowns, 3 picks, 3 touchdowns. Second in the SWAC in yards per game, passing touchdowns, first in efficiency, and first in completion percentage. He does it all. Shador Sanders has done it all for this offense, and he has been at times the only positive thing going on this offense. I mean, there are multiple games I can point to where I don't think Jackson State wins if it's not for Shador Sanders. This is going to be a giant road test because this is really the first big road test in a big classic like this where he's going to, like, the crowd is going to be up there. Yes, he had the first game against FAMU, but I think this environment on Saturday night is going to be something to watch. And I think this was going to be a great test of just how Shador Sanders handles the pressure. And I would imagine he's going to respond well, but he's going to be the key. Let him put the ball in the air. If you're TC Taylor, you're going to have to trust Shador to go play his best football this weekend against a secondary that has struggled at times slowing down talented quarterbacks. So I think Shador Sanders is primed to have a giant game. And on top of that, you look at the wide receivers they have. They deserve a lot of credit for this offensive, I guess, rejuvenation that we saw midseason. Keith Corbin, man, over 600 yards receiving, 4 touchdowns. He's top 2 in catches in the SWAC, top 5 in yards, top 10 in receiving touchdowns. And then, of course, the guy that I can't believe how good this kid is, really. Malachi Wadman, over 400 yards receiving, 9 receiving touchdowns. That's good for second in the SWAC right now, only behind D. Anderson from Alabama A&M. These two guys are going to be the X factors. Southern's DBs are going to have to be ready to try to find a way to stop these two guys. You cannot let Wyman and Hooks get over the, or Wyman and Corbin, my bad, get over the top of you, especially Wadman. If you let Wadman over the top of your defense, you are going to be in for a long day because him and Shador have that type of connection where they're going to hit on it a majority of the time. It is going to be you cannot allow explosive plays for Jackson State. The best way to control Jackson State's offense is make them drive down the field. The more plays they run, the better chance it is they make a mistake, and that's what you want. If you're allowing 1, 2, 3 play touchdown drives, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Southern has to limit the explosive plays through the air for Jackson State, and that's going to be a key for that Southern defense. But you also look at Trevante Rucker, Josh Lanier, Warren Newman. All these guys have been big factors through the air for Jackson State. But the key for Jackson State for me is you see that freshman number 2, put the ball in his hands and let him go win you the game because he is the most surefire thing you have going on the offensive side of the ball. And of course, the big thing is Jackson State has to protect Shador Sanders. The offensive line has to come to play. They had one of their better performances last week, but the Southern D line is supposedly getting Jordan Lewis back this weekend. We know what he did in the spring. You have to protect Shador Sanders. You cannot let him get killed this game. You cannot let that internal clock get sped up on the road in this type of environment. If that happens and they get to Shador early, we could have a very interesting game on our hands. So I really want to see how this offensive line handles the challenge. I think it's going to be loud. They have had communication problems at times picking up blitzes. Is that going to be a problem on the road? I know that if they can protect Shador, Shador can throw for no less than 300 this weekend. That's going to be the key is can the offensive line give him enough time to make plays down the field? And also, if you're rushing for Southern, you have to get him on the ground. If you let Shador out of the pocket and he makes some people miss, he's going to probably throw it down the field for 20, 30 yards every single time. And that goes back to that explosive play key. You cannot allow that to happen. So give the ball to Shador Sanders, let him make plays down the field, and let him be the distributor and leader of that offense. Protect them for the offensive line. And those are the keys for Jackson State for me this weekend. Now, for Southern, it should be obvious. If you watched a single Southern game this year, y'all know what the keys should be, and that is put the ball on the ground and run it down your opponent's throat. That is your key. Every single week, that's the identity of what this team's made out of. A big physical O-line and a bunch of running backs that can go make explosive plays happen. And that's going to be your key this weekend. And the number one thing for the Jags this weekend, you have to stick with the game plan. Too many teams have struggled to establish in like the early first quarter, and they get away from the run too quickly, and then they put their quarterback in their offense in bad spots and they end up losing the game, or the offensive rhythm is off all game. You have to consistently run the ball, even if it's for 2-3 yards a pop. Run the football. I said on the round table, Southern has to have 40 to 55 rush attempts this game. You have to put the ball on the ground and grind out something against this Jackson State defense because you're not a super strong passing team, and the secondary is pretty stout for Jackson State. And the matchups, we'll kind of get into it later. The matchups are not great for Southern. They only have about a receiver or two that I trust to go make plays, but you have the offensive line with the size and physicality to really make some holes. You have to put the ball on the ground, control the clock, and keep Jackson State's possessions to a minimum. That is why you have to run the ball if you're Southern. And you lead the SWAC in rushing yards per game with over 200 rushing yards per game, the only SWAC team to average over 200 this year. And you lead the SWAC in rushing touchdowns with almost 20 rushing touchdowns this year, and 3 games this season over 300 yards rushing. And in every single FCS game this season, they've run for over 100 yards. That's going to be a key. Kobe Dillon, Devin Ben, Craig Nelson, they are going to have giant games. Dillon averaging over 8 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns. He's second in the SWAC in yards per game and yards per carry, and he's top 6 in rushing touchdowns in the SWAC now. Devin Ben, top 10 in rushing yards per game, top 11 in touchdowns. And then Craig Nelson has done his thing, top 5 in yards per carry, averaging almost 7 yards per carry. If you can generate some chunk run plays and make Jackson State load the box and then work off of that to take a deep shot, that's going to be the key. But if you become one dimensional, I said it on the roundtable, the number one fear if you're Southern is if you're one dimensional, you're going to get your doors blown off. You cannot allow Jackson State to get comfortable knowing you can't run the football and just drop like 7 or 8 back in coverage because you were going to as that is a recipe for disaster. And we saw FAMU really lay the blueprint on how to slow this team down in the second half, where they didn't allow Southern last week to have a drive over 25 total yards. So you have to get back in that offensive consistency. And the other X factor off of that is McDaniel at the quarterback spot. He has to have a giant weekend at quarterback if the Jags expect to pull off this upset. And there is a question mark. I wonder what type of packages that Skelton's going to have at the QB spot, at the running back spot, at the slot spot. That how is Southern going to work into the game plan? Because he's so athletic and so explosive, you have to build him into the game plan. You saw how Texas Southern has some success at running the ball creatively last week. Can you work Skelton into that along with those talented running backs you have? That's going to be something interesting to see. But McDaniel is going to have a big game. I mean, he's thrown for over 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns, only 2 picks, which is the fewest in the SWAC. But he's going to have to make some plays downfield. You are not going to beat this Jackson State team by dinking and dunking. You are going to have to make a handful of throws down the field into tight windows to have a chance to beat this Jackson State team. And can McDaniel deliver on those on Saturday night? Now, his wide receiving unit has to help him. The top 2 guys, of course, are Marquise McLean and Jamar Washington. Both of these guys have to have big games, and they're going to have to create separation to get some of the best corners that they've seen all season. Marquise McLean over 350 receiving, 4 touchdowns, while Washington has over 260 and 2 touchdowns. Go make plays. We saw McLean make some huge plays when Southern knocked off Alcorn. Jamar Washington has had some big games this season as well. And then also Ethan Howard. If you're Southern, you have to get Ethan Howard involved in the game. He's a big physical tight end, 21 catches, 3 touchdowns. He could be a matchup nightmare for JSU if you utilize him correctly. So I want to see how they use Ethan Howard as well. But the number one thing, man, you run the ball well. Do not abandon it too early and continue to push the football down the field off the run when Jackson State loads the box. Those are the keys for Southern, man. And also, please don't turn the ball over. If you turn the ball over, this is going to get out of hand because Jackson State's too good to be given extra possessions and great field positions. So those are the keys for Southern. But quickly, man, the matchup to watch for me is Southern's offensive line against Jackson State's D line. It's really strength versus strength here. Jackson State's D-line leading the FCS in sacks and tackles for loss with 41 sacks and 85 tackles for loss. They have 3 or more sacks in every game but 2, which is Alabama State, Delta State, and have had 7 or more tackles for loss in every single game this season and 3 games with 12 or more tackles for loss. And the number one person, y'all already know who it is. Every game he's an X factor in this matchup. James Houston. You have to block James Houston. You have to chip him. Chip him with the running back. You have to chip him with the tight end. You have to cut him and lay on top of him. You got to do something. You cannot allow him just to bull rush you or get around the edge because he is going to wreak havoc if you do that. You even put him in the read option. Make him make a decision and try to take him out of the play. You have to account for James Houston. Your whole game plan has to be built around not letting James Houston wreck your offense. 10.5 sacks, 16.5 tackles for losses, the damage he's done this season. James Houston's a giant X factor. Also, Antoine Owens has really been coming along for Jackson State's D-line. 6 sacks, 13 tackles for loss. He's really been the big number 2, I guess the number 2 star on that D-line over the past few weeks. Antoine Owens is going to be giant. You also look at Aubrey Miller from the linebacking spot, Niles Gaddy, Devontae Davis. All these guys are going to be people to watch. Coinus Miller on the inside. The D line for Jackson State is going to try to get after you. Southern has to win the line of scrimmage, or Jackson State could really run away with this one if they dominate this line of scrimmage battle. Now, for Southern's O line, they've been solid this season. They're third in the SWAC in sacks allowed, only 15 allowed, and have not allowed more than 2 sacks in a game this season, and no more than 10 tackles for loss in any game this season. They had 5 all SWAC selections. I know there's been injuries all throughout this team. They're going to have to perform whoever they put out there. I mean, they're just going to have to go out there, make sure to communicate, make sure to pick up the creative blitzes, and make sure to beat your man one-on-one every play. I want to see some tenacious play from this offensive line, some tenacity, get after it, and I want to see how physical they can be. And winning this line of scrimmage battle could be the difference between Southern having a chance to win and Southern losing by 20 or more. They have to win this line of scrimmage battle. You have to protect McDaniel when he takes his shots, and you cannot allow Jackson State to make you one-dimensional and slow down the run. They're gonna have to win this matchup here. This matchup to watch is so important for particularly Southern, because if you allow Jackson State to wreak havoc in the backfield, it's going to cause a lot of problems for you down the stretch. Now, given all this, man, I know it's a rivalry game. You can toss out the records. I just don't see how Southern has enough to pull this one off. I've said all year, you're going to need an elite quarterback to beat Jackson State, in my opinion. I don't think McDaniel is that right now. I trust Jackson State. If I'm Jackson State, I think they're going to stack the box and say, you're not running. McDaniel better throw for 300 on us to beat us. And I just don't trust them to do that. I do think it's close early. The energy and just the motivation with nothing to lose, I think, is going to keep it close early. I think it's a vintage Jackson State game where it's probably tied at halftime, low scoring game. I think they pull away and win this game fairly convincingly in the second half. I have the Tigers winning this one 28-16 over Southern. I think Southern might probably get some early scores, but for me, I just can't see Jackson State losing this one, even in Baton Rouge with in the Boombox Classic with everything going on the 8-game losing streak. Jackson State's just too good this year, and I haven't seen it from Southern against elite teams. FAMU laid the blueprint. I think Jackson State does that as well. 28-16 Jackson State over Southern this weekend for me. Since it's our game of the week, go ahead and comment your score below. Give me your takeaways of the game. Subscribe, like the video, man. I appreciate y'all so much. If you're traveling to Baton Rouge, better get there today. Oh man, hope y'all have a safe trip. Hope y'all have a blast, man. I will see y'all on Monday for our SWAC recap. We got the membership on our community page if y'all want to see what the tiers are. Appreciate it if y'all join. If not, no pressure, man. I just appreciate y'all rocking with us. But for right now, man, the Blue Bloods are out.